The Cost of a Funeral by Cassie Janung, Rachel Ferragni, and Stephanie Pagelson. In the mid-1800s, burials were near the house, symbolizing the acceptance of death. In the mid-1900s, burials were next to the church. This began the transition from death in the home to death outside of the home. This was a time people feared and denied death. Today, burials are in beautiful cemeteries. This symbolizes the denial of death. Americans have become prone to put the responsibility of funerals on funeral directors rather than themselves. Because families place death in the hands of funeral directors, death is an avoided topic in our culture. Many people are unprepared for death due to its stigmatization and are therefore forced to make quick decisions after the death of a loved one occurs. People do not typically put money aside for funeral expenses. This relates to being unprepared for death. While funeral directors are very helpful and needed in the U.S., many families are taken advantage of. For example, a funeral director may offer a person a very expensive and extravagant casket. Their reasoning may be that their family member deserves the very best rather than a cheaper casket. Pre-need is a new trend in planning funerals. Pre-need includes 3 separate parts, the first being pre-arranging. This is the process of arranging funerals in advance. This is helpful for families because it eases the burden off of them. Pre-arranging also gives the deceased control over what happens after their death, such as their wake and funeral. The second type is pre-funding, which is when the dying person makes the legal commitment of money to pay for their funeral service. This again takes a big burden off of their family. Pre-funding is usually done through insurance or a trust. The Totten Trust is a type of bank or credit union savings account that protects the money put aside for funeral services. This money is given to the designated family member right after the death occurs. The third type is prepaying. This involves actually paying the funeral director rather than putting it into a savings account or a trust. This method is very risky because there are too many unknowns. For example, if the funeral home goes out of business, what happens to the money people gave to prepay their funerals? If people choose to move to another state, what happens to the money? If people decide to get cremated, do they receive a refund? If the funeral home loses the records of people's payments, are they forced to pay yet again? Also, if the price value increases over time, the family members are responsible for paying the difference. This is due to inflation. Prepaying is non-transferable, non-refundable, and may carry hidden fees that family members will have to pay for. Embalming is the process of draining bodily fluids from a corpse and replacing them with a mix of chemicals to temporarily preserve the body for viewing. Formaldehyde, methanol, and ethanol are the 3 chemicals involved with the embalming process. This process preserves the body for 3 to 4 days. Approximately 4 out of 5 Americans choose to embalm, however, this varies based on culture. Embalming can cost anywhere from $225 to $1,212, with the average cost at $550. Embalming is not legally required by the state if the body is buried or cremated within 24 hours to 48 hours of the death. Cremation involves the reduction of the human body through heat or direct flame. This is a cheaper alternative to burials, even with the funeral services. Cremation can cost around $300, not including the urn. An urn is used to hold the cremains of loved ones. Urns can cost from $80 up to $2,000, with the average cost of an urn being $200. The casket is the single most expensive item of a traditional funeral. Caskets that are metal, wood, fiberboard, or plastic can cost around $2,000. Mahogany, bronze, and copper caskets can go as high as $10,000 or more. Families may feel pressured to purchase an expensive casket for their loved ones. This ties back to being pressured by funeral directors as well when it comes to purchasing items for funerals. Families may also want to spend a good amount of money to show their wealth to others. Other preparation fees may include cosmetology. This process is done to prepare the body for viewing and visitation by applying makeup, dressing the body in clothes, placing the body into the casket, and styling the person's hair. Cosmetology can cost from $50 to $363, with the average cost being $203. Transportation fees include when the funeral home picks up the body from the place of death, usually the home or hospital. The corpse is then brought back to the funeral home. This type of transportation is expensive since 2 staff members are needed for this type of removal. Funeral homes do not transport the body over 25 miles. This costs about $125 to $500, with the average cost being $233. There are many other expenses when planning a funeral, such as death certificate fees per copy are about $12, flowers can range from $100 to $600, funeral ceremony fees $200 to $1,425, funeral homes basic services $480 to $3,000, grave plot $400 to $10,000, graveside service $200 to $1,700, guest register book $25 to $80, hearse or funeral coach $150 to $530, limousine or lead vehicle $75 to $520, obituary $0 to $600, and storage and refrigeration fees $35 to $100 a day. An American funeral can range from $7,000 to $10,000, with the average cost at $9,000 today. 100,000 people will struggle to pay for a funeral this year. The cost of funerals have risen 80% between 2004 and 2013 and will continue to increase. Here are a few tips to help stay within a certain budget when paying for a funeral. The first is to check out a range of caskets. Ask to see lower priced models, such as those made of pine, because they are typically not featured. Also, shop around online or other places besides the funeral home. The second is to clarify plot changes up front. This is important to avoid hidden fees. The third is to consider cremation since it is cheaper than a burial. Fourth is to pre-plan your funeral to get an idea of what it costs and begin saving. However, do not prepay for a funeral since the risks outweigh the benefits. Lastly, there are special discounts for veterans and their families. Those who are veterans should look more into these possible discounts. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and learned a little more about the cost of a funeral.